Welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Terry M, who's come to share on the topic of how dreams come true for up to 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. Terry, it's over to you.
Thanks so much. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Terry, and I'm an addict. I'm also a man in long-term recovery. What that means is because someone worked their 12-step on me, I have not had to drink any alcohol or take any dope since May the 23rd, 1991. And for that, I am beyond grateful. I did not find Cocaine Anonymous. Cocaine Anonymous found me. And I want to hold on to that reality. And I want to spend the rest of my life honoring that responsibility to go out there and try to find people just like I was that are out there dying that don't even know what's wrong with them. You know, I started getting loaded at a young age. I'm a child addict. I remember my father saying things like, "What's wrong with you?" You know, I remember my mom saying, "I'm so ashamed of you." And I remember my dad, try whatever he could, physical violence, the strap, anything to try to beat some sense into this son who kept tearing things up. And they would say things to me like, you're like a sheep, you're easily led. And in our reading, Reaching Out, it says about that we couldn't get better till we could let go of all the horrible, negative, and unloving things we thought and said about ourselves. Man, that's me, bro. If anybody ever talked to me the way I've talked to me, oh man, there would have been hell to pay. So I was this little boy. I'm born in the Los Angeles basin on Christmas Day, 1955. So I'm approaching my 70th birthday in a couple of weeks, right? And, man, I'll never forget what it was like to be a kid. I was so filled with joy. It, being number 9 out of 10 kids, we would all walk into midnight mass. There'd be my mom at the front, all 10 kids, my dad at the back, right? And we would walk into midnight mass, which started at 11 o'clock back where I grew up. And when we come out of church, it was midnight. And everybody would be saying to me, "Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, happy birthday." And man, my life was so filled with joy. I remember this one Christmas in particular. It's a place that my sponsor taught me to go to in meditation. And my first sponsor in the early days of my recovery, he said, "Go back to a place where you were happy. Go back to a place where your life was fulfilled." And man, I went all the way back to this Christmas. I think I was probably 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10. And me and my little brother both got bicycles at that Christmas. And it was like, man, I felt so good. I could run like the wind. I took my bicycle, and it was back in the days of, and as the time passed, the days of Easy Rider started. And in America, everybody wanted to, so I put a rake on the front of my bicycle. And I got to ride my bike, and I painted it red, white, and blue, just like the Harley out of that classic film. And man, I wanted to go to New Orleans. I wanted to go to the House of Blue Lights. I had no idea what it was, but I just wanted all of that. Because what happened for me is drugs and alcohol took over the world when I was about 11 years old. And my brothers and sisters were all getting high. It coincided with a very sad time in my life. And my mother, who I loved, and she was like the glue that held our family together, she got sick with cancer and was very sick for the next few years. and she died right after I turned 15. And so, man, I found the comfort that drugs and alcohol give at an early age. And let me tell you what, man, I love, as it says in our book, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I go, yeah, you like that? I'll show you some shit. You want some effect? Come with me. I've taken more, I smoke angel dust, dropping acid, anything I could get to alter my consciousness, to get away from the reality of my existence. And what had happened? I was absolutely thrilled with my existence. I couldn't have been happier to be this little boy running the hills and hiking and doing track and field, and I could play all sports. And I had so much, like, people use the word potential a lot in my life. And, man, I would build it up and tear it down. And that was just the way of my life. And at a very young age, it was as though I started digging my own grave. It was like I just started to throw things of value. Drugs and alcohol, man, are a graveyard for everything beautiful. And as I dug this grave, I threw like my father's hopes for his son into that grave. I threw my mother's dreams for her boy. My mom went to her grave tormented, wondering whether her young son was going to beat her to that grave. And I owe my life to Cocaine Anonymous. I think it's the most open, loving, and affirming fellowship or any place on this planet. It's a place that welcomed this broken man in with open arms. I could not have imagined what it was like for the early members of CA to try to find a place in the sun. I know when I got sober in 1991, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the big book. But I will tell you what, it was fairly hostile at that time. If you weren't with the right oldsters, man, if you mentioned doing dope, you could get your head cut off in a meeting. And I was so sensitive, I was convinced that by that time I was 35 years old. I had a wife and 2 kids. And even though I had everything that a man could want, I was convinced that I was such a failure that I could never stop letting people down, and that the very best thing I could do would be to kill myself. And that was the condition of this incredibly frail human being that got 12-stepped. And the very first meeting I ever attended was a Cocaine Anonymous hospital and institution meeting. And I was so broken, man. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was 140 pounds. I don't know what that is, like 65, 66 stones or whatever it is, or kilograms. I don't know how y'all weigh, but that's like skin and bones, man. And my skin was gray. My complexion was shot. And that was the best part of me, man. What I felt like on the inside was just almost unimaginable. It almost brings me to tears to think what it was like back then. I just couldn't stop. I would swear on my dead mother's grave. I would put my hand on the Bible that I'm never going to do dope again. I would swear on the lives of my children that I will never use again. And man, I love my boys as much as a father ever loved their kids in my addiction. I would have killed for my sons. I would have died for them, but I couldn't get sober for them. And along the way, man, I robbed their piggy banks. Along the way, I robbed their college funds, turned it all into dope. I hated who I was and what I had become. What happened to that kid who used to love to chase the clouds, who used to get on his Schwinn bicycle with his little brother and go riding. And what happened to that kid who used to hurdle over everything? And me and my brother would yell, jumping partners to the end. And we would fly over every wall or hedge or just drugs and alcohol, man. Just a merciless, right? The big book uses the word rapacious creditor, a starving, just like, And it was on me so bad, man. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had no idea, in spite of my stories of addiction. And I've got quite a few wild stories of addiction. Like, I am what they called a polysubstance abuser. That means many and any. I've shot dope where the only liquid I could get was out of a shit and piss-filled toilet bowl in a train station in Stuttgart, Germany. Literally, it didn't flush. It was an industrial toilet. There was no water in the whole train station. And there was like a mountain of turd of the travelers who'd just been dropping ass over the increasing pile. And I just drew that liquid up because it was either that or not shoot the dope. And for me, there was no choice in that. I get it today. That's kind of abnormal. I've got a hole in my arm where I shot up a bunch of cocaine once and I didn't have a needle. I had a syringe, a big ass veterinarian syringe filled with cocaine, and I lost the needle. No way to do the dope. And I'm thinking, what do I do with this syringe full of dope? Do I squirt it in my mouth? Do I save it till tomorrow? Yeah. I hear a voice, shove it up your ass. No, man, ain't nothing going in my ass. That's not my story. And then I hear this voice say, just shoot up without a needle. And I tied off and I went, bam! Now that shit's abnormal. But in spite of all of that, when I think of that last example, that was 10 years before someone worked their 12-step on me. The amount of hell on earth an addict goes through, I don't know y'all's stories, but I'm sharing you mine. And what happened for me is a miracle occurred, man. A man armed with the truth about himself stood between me and that grave. And this guy looked at me, and it was at a pawn shop in Phoenix, Arizona, and he says, dude, I don't know if you're in trouble or not. And the minute he started to talk, I thought, oh, God, here we go, man. One more person with authority over me going to ask me some question that I don't have the answer to, like, what's wrong with you? Or why don't you just stop? If you have that nice wife and kids, what about them? Hell, if I knew what was wrong with me, I would have changed. I wanted to change. In fact, if you had given me a lie detector test, I would have been passing them all the way to the very end. Every time I went to stop, I meant it. But what I didn't understand is that the needed power to stay stopped just didn't exist in me. And the idea of saying that today seems so simple and clear. But man, I don't know what I don't know. And so I was in such a broken place. And this guy looks at me and he starts to talk, but he flipped the script. He changed the story. And he didn't ask me questions about what was wrong with me. He told me what was wrong with him. He did what I'm doing. I didn't know he was working his 12th step on me. I had no idea what a 12th step was. I was just listening to him. And I got to tell you what I was doing when he was talking. I was judging him. I was sitting there thinking, oh man, this poor bastard. If I just let this guy preach a while longer, maybe I'll get an extra $20 for my Bose speakers. Now, I know today that that man was an angel. You know, there's a song, and it's a pretty good one. It goes, send me an angel right now. Man, I'd been begging God, God, save me, take me, free me, help me, please. And nothing ever worked, man. I thought God wasn't answering my prayer. I remember the last nights before the miracle happened. I lay on my bed next to my wife, and at night, involuntarily, my right arm would just rise up. And my wife would push my arm down because she didn't want it to fall over on her. And my arm would go back up, and she'd push it back down and go up. That was like my nights. You know those nights? You remember those nights? When you can't quite sleep and you can't quite breathe and you're stuck in that land of no midnights, hoping there's enough in the morning to just keep the madness off you. You know, I've thought a lot about that over the years, and I think what was causing that, I think it was God. I think it was God seeing how close to death I was. I think my higher power was reaching down and taking me by the hand and saying, hold on, Terry, hold on. I got something for you. I got a new life for you. I started a new fellowship for you in Southern California, and it's in your state now. And it's here. It's waiting for you. Hold on. I held on. But you know, in the middle of my miracle, I was judging. And that tells me something about this God. It tells me something about Cocaine Anonymous. That it welcomes a man as broken as me who spits in the face of the angel that God sends me. But that's the way it was, right? So I that day ended up in a detox. Never dreamed, never thought it existed, didn't even know a detox was possible, didn't even know one existed. I got a good question for you. How elaborate was God's plan to get you to your first meeting or to this one? You know, because the plan was pretty remarkable when I see it. I was driving a stolen van conversion. I had gone to that pawn shop before, you know, and this cat, I was a regular customer, and he did something that was amazing that day. He started to tell me his story. And he said, I don't know if you're in trouble or not, man, but I used to be in trouble. I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop taking dope. And I went to this detox, and it's on the south end of the runway at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, and it's called LARC, and it's a local addiction reception center. And you walk in there, man. I walked in there, and they helped me, man. You could walk in, they'll help you. He said, I walked in there, and that was 4 years ago, man, and I haven't had a drink or a drug in 4 years, and I own this pawn shop and everything in it. And then he got this big grin, and he said, you know, a lot of it used to be yours. And I thought, damn, that is some cold-blooded shit right there, right? So I ended up in detox that day. And after being in that detox for 4 days, I snuck out because I had been smoking crack in the parking lot of that detox in that stolen van conversion. And I'd thrown that crack pipe out in the weeds. And after being in that detox center for 4 days, sick as hell, man, wearing hospital clothes, I snuck out and I went to that field where I had my first clear thought, and that thought was, I bet you there's another hit in that pipe. And I snuck out of that place, and I went and I found that pipe, and I stuck it in the waistband of my hospital clothes, and I pulled the stickers out of my hair, and I went in the bathroom and I put the fire to that pipe, and I saw the oils and the resins, and I took the biggest hit I ever took, and I blew out the biggest cloud of smoke I've ever blown out. And I felt nothing. And I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and I leaned forward And I went like that, and there was something on my lip, and it crawled down my hand, and it was a bug. I looked in the bowl, and there were the burnt remnants of bugs. I had just smoked bugs. And I went, oh, fuck. I took that pipe and I threw it in the trash can. I threw it in that trash can. And I climbed on top of that plastic covered mattress in that detox. And I said, God, help me, please. If there's another way to live, you better show it to me. The very next day, how elaborate was God's plan? My little brother had been trying to help me. Him and my wife found out that they could get me private insurance, a thing called Cobra in the U.S. And I got moved to another detox. Now I'm day 5 of my detox. And it's different though, because everybody thinks I'm 5 days sober, and I'm not. Even though bugs don't really get you high, it was my intent to get high, so that's my sobriety date, right? And there I am now hiding this secret, one more layer of shame, one more layer of pain, one more secret I've stuffed so far down inside of me, I just can, And my wife and brother were visiting me at this new detox. And it was at a hospital in Tempe, Arizona. And they said, hey, man, your guests are welcome to go with you, but it's mandatory that all patients go to the Cocaine Anonymous meeting across the hall. And so my wife and brother said, we're going with you. And they walked into the very first meeting. The very first meeting. And when the man was done sharing, it's this kind of a format. A guy shared, and then they pulled tickets. And the first ticket they pulled was my little brother's. And he talked about being there to try to help his big bro who he was watching die before his very eyes. And the second ticket they called, there were 100 people in that room. The second ticket they pulled was mine. And I said, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just so afraid. And the third ticket they pulled that night was my wife, Donna's. She's still my wife, right? We were 12 and a half years married then. She's in the other room making gingerbread houses for all of our granddaughters and nieces and nephews. So we're going to have a gingerbread party soon. And we're married 47 years now. And I think how elaborate was God's plan? All 3 tickets, the first 3 tickets were ours. And then I said to myself, how often does that happen? And I would tell you in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, that happens all the time. That's how it works here. God selects who picks the tickets and what order they come in. I've been in meetings where I've been broken in so many hard ways, and exactly what I needed was what was shared or the topic that was picked. Every time I remember taking a sponsee, I do 2 hours of step work with this guy, and then I give him some reading assignments, and I said, here's your assignment, bro. I want you to read this. And he looks at me, and he was a handsome young man, like 19 years old, and his eyes got misty, and he said, I can't read. He had made it through and graduated high school and couldn't read. But he was so charismatic, he could charm his way through. And all the teachers just passed him. I said, bro, don't worry about that. We'll learn. I'll teach you how to read through this big book. And in the meantime, I'm going to get you an audio copy of the book. And he and I went to the 5:30 meeting. And the first guy that shared that night shared about he felt less than because he couldn't read. And the man he passed it to was an old Indian man named Leonard P., who was as great a man to recovery as there's ever been. And Leonard said, I used to go into the meetings and hold a newspaper. And when they would say, will you do the reading today, Leonard? And he'd go, oh no, I've been reading the paper all day. My eyes are tired. And one person after another told this young man's story. That's the power of Cocaine Anonymous. That's where dreams come true. This place where the broken get to walk, where we come out of our self-made graves to become free human beings again, where we get to stand tall and look the world in the eyes and not be so filled with shame and darkness and secrets. So I got to get busy in Cocaine Anonymous, man. I have been and continually go to treatment centers and jails and correction facilities. I go where the wild things are. I go where the broken are, because that's my tribe. Those are my people. And when I talk about God, I'm talking about you. Because God never came to me through the Bible, and God didn't come to me through the big book, and God didn't come to me through the preachers or the teachers. God has always shown up as the men and women of Cocaine Anonymous or AA. That's how God shows up to me. And because of God showing up through you, I can now see God everywhere. I've been living by a mantra, looking for the good and the God, and I find it. And I find it in the Bible today, and I find it in that big book, and I find it in everything I can get my hands on that's recovery related, that moves my life forward in a meaningful way. So what could I ever do to thank Cocaine Anonymous for fulfilling my life? I got to become a father to my sons. I got to become a husband to my wife. I never got a chance to become a son to my mom. But I watched men become great sons to their mothers, like my friend Ralph and his brother Ronald and Reggie. I never got to do that with my own father. But I have sponsored so many men that come to me and they go, man, I got a real problem with my pops. I go, come sit with me. Let's find a way to peace through that. Dads take a terrible whooping in this world, it seems. You know what, man? Cocaine Anonymous has changed it all for me. Talk about my dad. I remember going to treatment. And it was Father's Day, and they gave me an assignment. They said, we want you to write a letter to your dad, because I had my problems, all the things he failed to do. And they said, write your dad a letter. So I wrote my dad a letter forgiving him for everything that he had failed to do, right? He didn't develop my athletic skills. He was thunderous, man, when it came to giving a whooping, and harsh with his words at times. And I wrote that letter, man. And I read it to all the newcomers in my small group with me, and they all cried. I think I even busted a tear out of the counselor. Man, Cocaine Anonymous is amazing. These 12 steps are amazing. I found that letter 2 years later. And when I read that letter, I realized everything in that letter was a lie. It was the truth as I saw it in that moment, though. I didn't deliberately set down to write lies. I forgave my father for his failings. But what had changed in those 2 years? Had my dad died in 89, I got sober in 91. Did my dead father change between 91 and 93? Or had the 12 steps changed me? You know what the story is. Those steps will change a human being if you open your heart and do the work. And man, I'll tell you what, over those couple of years of sobriety that I had experienced, I saw what a real man was. I saw that my dad had been faithful to his wife where I had not been faithful to mine. My dad went to work every day. Sometimes most of his life worked 2 jobs to feed 10 kids. But I forgave him as I had robbed my own family. At night, I would lock the doors of my house at night to keep the boogeyman on the outside, but I was locking the monster on the inside. It was me that was causing the pain in my household, not Freddy Krueger, not the boogeyman. It was the father. My dad done none of that. So as I have gone about emptying this grave, and as I've gone about working these steps, I continually learn things about myself. I've learned what it's like to receive forgiveness. I've learned what it's like to let everybody else off the hook, man, because I don't want to hold anybody else up to a standard I never lived up to myself. You know, and as a result of this program, all I have to do is open myself up to what surrounds me, and I will hear exactly what it is that I need in order for me to grow. I sat in on that Belgium Zoom, and I shared it with another member at the time, and I sat and sobbed as another man told the story of the healing grace in his life. There was a time I could not even feel my own wife and children's tears or fears. There was a time where I had no ability to really connect even emotionally with anything other than the incredible need to just hit that pipe one more time. Just go get some more of that heroin. Get me some more of that dope. And then somebody works their 12-step on me. They sent me on a path that had me walk 12 steps. And I've walked those steps over and over and over. And in the last few months, I've done them a couple of times because I've needed to. Because, man, sometimes the wind is blowing so hard. And sometimes, man, we just got to get some relief. And the place that I get the relief is by doing step work. That's the place where God's grace meets my willingness. And something magical happens in there. And I get to get a much needed break from myself and my thinking. So it's a Christmas season, right? My birthday time. The songs say the most wonderful time of the year. And I think it is. And I'm so grateful that I was able to change the direction of my life. When I say I was able to take the necessary actions that will produce change. But I had no idea what those things were that needed to be done. And there comes my responsibility. I have a responsibility to be there to show others exactly how I've recovered. Exactly how to work these steps to the best of my knowledge. And as a result of it, amazing things happen. My very first sober Christmas, so it was Christmas 1991. Now, I love tradition. I'm a good man. I have a bad disease. And every Christmas, I'd get the kids ready. You know, read them the poem. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house. And, man, we would set up the cookies for Santa and carrot sticks for the reindeer. And it's our very first Christmas, and I get a glass of milk, and I put it next to the cookies. And my oldest son, Devin, he was 7 years old. And he looks at me, he goes, "Daddy, what's that milk for?" And I said, "Well, that's for Santa." He goes, "Dad, Santa drinks rum and Coke." Oh, man, that's funny, but that hurt like hell, right? Because my addiction got transferred over to my boy. And he had to walk through some dark nights of his own soul as a result of the things I was teaching. Things that I didn't ever want to teach that my kids learned. But because of this program, when my son hit the dark night of his soul, he knew where to go. And he was able to find the exact same thing that I did, which is a fellowship with its arms wide open, welcoming him like it had welcomed me. And the more broken and the more afraid and the more lost and the more alone you are, the more we want to love on you. And it's just the most incredible thing. So Christmases are different now, right? We do toy drives. And the other night I had a bunch of old folks over. I'm getting old myself, but I had two 57-year sober people over at my house for dinner the other night, along with a bunch of Al-Anons that had over 50 years. And they were just all old folks that don't have anywhere to go for the holidays. So we cooked a Christmas dinner and we sat around and we sang Christmas carols. And we talked about the early days and the Christmases of their holidays. And we got to share in some beautiful moments. And I'm going to leave you with this. So one of the things that happens when you stop doing dope is that you get free. And in that freedom comes the ability to maybe write, create. So I love Christmas. And I love writing parodies of Christmas carols. So I've written a bunch of them. I have the 12 Steps of Christmas. On the first day of Christmas, my sponsor gave to me a big book for me to read. And then it goes on. And on the 5th day of Christmas, I'll do that. On the 5th day of Christmas, my sponsor gave to me an ass whipping. 4 daily calls, 390.92 service commitments, and a big book for me to read. And then I have, cocaine and acid and Bud Light and Quaaludes, cross tops and Chiva and magical mushrooms. But that's not the best one. I got 3 minutes to go. I got my timer set. But what has become a real Christmas classic around the world is one that I wrote years ago called Frosty the Dope Man. And this one I'm going to sing for you, and then I will send it over to you, Young, if anybody wants any of these Christmas carols. I'll tell you what, there's nothing that will lighten up a rehab like this will. I actually got thrown out of the Arizona State Penitentiary for singing crackhead Christmas carols because they considered it contraband, even though you can buy heroin and cocaine for $60 a gram on the yard, but don't you dare sing a crackhead. So we're going to end today's share with a Christmas classic, Frosty the Dope Man. Frosty the Dope Man was a jolly happy soul with an old crack pipe and a vacuum nose and 2 eyes made out of coal. Frosty the Dope Man is a fairy tale, they say. He was made of snow, but the addicts know how he came to life one day. There must have been some resin in that old crack pipe he found, for when he lit that mother up, he began to dance around. Frosty the Dope Man was stoned as he could be, and the addicts say he could smoke all day just the same as you and me. Join in. Puffity puff, puff, puffity puff, look at Frosty go. Puffity puff, puff, puffity puff, hey dude, where's my blow? Frosty the Dope Man knew the police were hot that day, so he said, let's run and have some fun before I'm sent away. Down to the dope house with the crack pipe in his hand, smoking here and there all around the square, saying, what's that over there? He peeked and tweaked on down the street right to the traffic cop, and he only paused for a moment when he got that taser shock. Oh, Frosty the Dope Man had to hurry on his way, and he waved goodbye, saying, man, I'm high, I'll be back again someday. Puffity puff, puff, puffity puff, puff, look at Frosty go. Puffity puff, puff, puffity puff, it's off to jail I go. Frosty the Dope Man. Merry Christmas.
George, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, Terry, for that beautiful share. Yeah, I really got a lot from what you say. I can really relate to many things that you say. You have a lot of experience, like you're advanced, you are more advanced in age than me, so I can learn a lot from what you say and use it like in order to apply it and practice everything you said in my recovery. So yeah, for me also now that I'm free and out of addiction, I can face life, I can face reality and deal with life on life's terms. I don't have to keep any more secrets. I don't have to hide anymore behind the wall. I don't have to fool people. So I'm starting to get my freedom back. On the 17th of December, I will be 4 months sober. I've never been that sober for a long time in my life. Since I was 14 years old, I've been taking drugs, drinking alcohol. So this is a new beginning for me. It's a new life, and I'm really excited to say that I'm 10 years or 20 years sober. Uh, Now it's time for new beginnings, new things. I have a good future ahead of me. I've started my work again. I'm getting paid. I'll have to go and get my salary like on Thursday. So I'm using the money like in a good way. I'm not spending it on drugs because before, as soon as I had money, the first thing that I would think about is to go and buy drugs or do bad things or alcohol, stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'm doing great for now. Uh, I don't want to feel complacent. Just for today, I'll keep working the program and I'll work with my sponsor. I'll work with you fellow addicts. I'll attend meetings. I'll try to be of service as much as I can to help the still suffering addicts. And one of my goals is to go to the prison in my country to help the prisoners to be able to share the message with them and to give them like emotional support because they're abandoned. Nobody is supporting them. So I think that will be a good way for me to be of service and to keep working the program. And I'm very glad to be on this platform. I thank Danny and I thank Angela for giving me that opportunity. It's a great pleasure and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you guys for letting me share. Yes.
Thank you so much, George. Can I just remind everyone that it is Q&A, so please ask Terry a question. Next up, we've got Kathy. Kathy, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Danny, for your service, and Young, and all of the folks who are behind the scenes keeping the trains running. And Terry, wow, hearing a story that's my story without sounding anything like mine. And I love that you drew the line at not putting something up your posterior, but all of the other things that you would do. But you had to draw a line somewhere, so I appreciate that you had some discretion with that. Yeah, I mean, you said so many things, that you hear the message, but then you grind on for how many more years, just circling the draining, feeling miserable before the message actually seeps in. And I hear a lot of faith. I hear a lot of higher power. I hear a lot of being of service in your message. And I guess my question to you is this. How do you keep it fresh for you now where you are in your journey? Because life happens, people die, the world goes sideways, things are crazy, things can get scary. And I'm 15 years and some change in, and I know that a drink and a drug is not going to solve any problems. But sometimes I want to grab onto my self-will and just go do things or make things happen. So I would love to hear from you kind of what you do to keep it fresh and kind of keep yourself in the middle of that spiritual boat. And
Thank you. That's a very good question. The thing that does it for me is staying connected to new people, because that's where all of my problems get right sized. I am so sad these days, man. I've had so many people that I'm really close with die. Literally, man, there's a crew of men that sat on my front porch for the past 20 years. And we would sit there and talk about life, and I sponsored one and one sponsored me, and, and they're all dead. Natural causes, cancer, shit like that, and then all the regular overdoses and all the sadness and the illnesses. And one of my close relatives is dying of cancer right now. And there's just so much sadness that surrounds me. And if I try to take that on, it will weigh me down. But the minute I sit with a new person and you realize what the real struggle is, man, of what it means, because everything happening in my life would be reduced to the next hit the minute I take the first one. Nothing else happens anymore. And so by staying there, it's keeping me grateful, and it's keeping me mindful of how fortunate I am that I was born in a moment of time where recovery was possible. So that's the best I got for you on that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. Next up, we've got Gav. Gav, would you like to come in?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone who's made the meeting possible, all the service team, and thank you, Terry, so much for that beautiful share. I cried and I laughed, throughout that. Thank you so much. My question really is, as somebody relatively myself new to sponsoring, whilst, I am aware it's simply my responsibility to guide someone through this recovery process, via the book and the 12 steps. Would you have any advice for somebody who is new to sponsoring?
The best advice I got is do more of it, because we need cats willing to do it, right? And the more of it you do, the more my life is fulfilled. God balances it, right? I only will take like one new person at a time, because I understand the devotion that takes. But once you've done the work with somebody, then their job is to do to go and do likewise. And so I would get as many guys as you possibly could and let that be the music of your soul. Because that's sure been the one of mine. It's the one thing that I think that I do better than most. I don't mean most other people, but most other things that I do in my life. It's where I love the magic of this. I got a sponsee right now getting ready to have a baby. He texted me, him and his wife are ready to have a second child. And the first one was an impossibility. And the second one was never going to happen. And he shared at my home group last week, and when he was done talking, it was one of the best messages I ever heard. And then I thought, man, I have a little piece of that. This baby being born into this world because I'm the sponsor. I have a little piece of that. We get to participate in each other's lives in the most remarkable way. So I would just suggest doing as much sponsoring as you can. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gav, for your question, and Terry for that beautiful answer. Next up, Bill. Bill, do you want to come in?
Thank you, mate. Terry, thank you so much, brother. Wow, what a gift. You talked about judging. I got sober 45 years ago in Cleveland, Ohio, the heartland of AA. They said, if you can't get sober here, you can't get sober. 20 years later, I'm getting sober in St. Pete, and I'm telling them how much better the AA is in Cleveland than it is in Florida. And they asked me a simple question. If AA is so good in Cleveland, why are you getting sober here? And I would tell them what was wrong with them. You know what they said, Terry? We may not be able to help you here because you're finding fault with the people that are saving your life. Isn't it the disease of addiction? You know, my sponsor told me maybe God's common name for us is something. And something told me to call you today, and I didn't call. But something also told me not to go to my in-person noon meeting. And when I would have been in that meeting, I would have missed the call that you made to me because we were supposed to talk today. So here's my question, Terry. Your dad passed. The letter that you wrote was not the truth. Why would the book tell us? Some people can't be seen. We write them a letter, particularly if they've gone on to the next room. Because maybe could God be the postman, Terry? Could it be that there is a beginning like it talks about, but it never talks about the end in our book? It says if we were to live, we had to begin somewhere if the spirit life was going to begin. It never mentions ending, does it? The real question is, Terry, what are all those medals behind you? I love you, brother.
You're funny. I love you too, man. Those are race medals. I started running. I got sober. I got to pull that shit out of the grave.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the question. And Terry, thanks for the answer. Ralph, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Man, oh my goodness. Where'd you guys go? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay, because you disappeared on my screen. My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic.
All right.
And thank you, T. And you brought some stuff up in me. This was my mom's favorite holiday, and you started talking, and two things. One, when you get away from your story, sometimes it's I know for me, it gets a little faint. I remember you telling your story when you were on top of it, when you were new. I remember when you used to tell your story. And instead of saying you were smoking bugs, you were smoking crickets. You remembered specifically the bugs you were smoking. You were smoking crickets. Ken knows. He's on here. I remember young Terry when he was sharing. It was crickets. And here's my question. Christmas season, you're a Christmas guy, I'm a Christmas guy. What, of all the things you've received since you've been in this fellowship, what is the most unexpected gift you received that you didn't see coming? And now that you can take a look back at your life, you say, wow, I didn't know about this one.
Ooh, man. But the life is filled with as much treasure as mine. It'd have to be the recurring theme of being so wounded in my relationship with my mother and having her come to me 3 times from beyond the grave, face to face, just like I see you right now. I saw her. And any power that is so big that can go back and take a young man. I thought my mother's last words to me were, get out of here, you make me sick. And because of this fellowship, I heard her last words were, I love you, baby. But it took 15 years of sobriety to get to hear those words, because my disease does not want me to hold on to the truth. You know, our friend Peter Olson, who just died, he loved this one prayer. And it was, God, help me to see the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is. And so I didn't want to see the truth, right? Because to have your mother say, get out of here, you make me sick, that is fuel for the disease. For a mother to say, I love you, baby, that in it. So I'd have to say that that's probably the one. But then I think, well, man, I saw my pops after he died. And then I think, oh, I lost a son and I was with my dead son. And then I think they're going to all think, oh, Terry's whacked, man. They got a speaker today who sees dead people. But it's a life full of treasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And thanks, Ralph, for the question. Miranda, do you want to come in?
Hi, my name's Miranda. I'm an addict. Yeah, I'm suffering with a lot of anxiety, because, I've only been partially honest, and I've started a new job, and I told them that I've been done for drink driving, but I lied when it happened, and they're gonna be, they've told me today that they're gonna be doing a vetting. And so it means that if I'm truly honest, then it's not going to be as bad as what it will be if I'm not honest. And normally I go in fight or flight and run away and not go back to the job. And I'm 16 months sober now, and I'm trying to do the program, the 12 steps. I've done it twice now with everything. And I'm just trying to not do that fight or flight and go in there tomorrow to my boss and say, right, this is what I've done. These are the reasons why I've done it, and just leave it with God. And I'm just wondering some words of wisdom, please, because I'm like, I'm just trying to do the best thing. And I know honesty is the way forward, but I want to cry and I want to shout and I just want to scream. And the only thing I've ever done is drink and drug on it. And that is the one thing I'm not going to be doing today. So yeah, a bit of wisdom would be much appreciated, please.
You don't need any wisdom. You already got it. Whatever voice
I want to cry.
Whatever you're listening to on the inside, that's it, right? Because that's it, facing it. And
sorry, I'm a bit emotional now. I'm just like, whew, saying it out loud is like so hard.
That was powerful for all of us. So you just blessed all of us with your beautiful answer. You just face it. You know,
it's hard. It's admitting where you've gone wrong, and it's so scary because that day was horrible. That brought me in these rooms, and it's just so scary to admit where I've gone wrong, and then admitting it to somebody that's higher than you, and admitting that justice day of where you've gone wrong. It's so hard, and normally I just want to run away, but I know it's not the right thing this time. I need to face it, and whatever the outcome is, I need to accept it too, because God has got me anyway, and I know He has. So thank you.
So I'm gonna give you a little comfort here.
Thank you.
You never know how the story goes. You may walk in tomorrow and tell them the truth, and they may fire you on the spot. And if that's what happens, you're just not supposed to be at that job. I got fired from the company I retired from when I was in treatment. They fired me. I needed my job in the worst way, and they fired me. 9 months later, they reached out. I heard you're sober. Yeah, how much time you got? 9 months. Hey, man, will you come talk to us? And I ended up running their whole company, right? So you never know when God's going to show up. Sometimes it's a redirection. We don't really know what the deal is, but lean on your truth. That's a good thing. That's a good, beautiful thing to do. Applaud your courage. Thank you.
I have my cross and I kiss it every day, and I think I ask God for wisdom.
Well, He's given it to you. So
Thank you.
already nailed it. You got this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda, for your question, and Terry for that answer. Last up, Young, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you so much, Terry. That was, it was like a beautiful, moving song listening to your words. I was really moved tonight. I just wanted to ask you a really quick question. That little boy who was riding his bike with his brother, have you found him again?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, man. And my little brother was almost killed in a motorcycle accident a couple of years ago. And he lived through it, and he couldn't walk, right? And so literally I went and I took that little brother, and every day I would go take him lunch, and then I would take him to a beautiful place to walk. And in the beginning, he could only walk maybe 5 feet. And then the next day we'd go for 10. And the next day we'd run from 10. And I wrote him a poem called Hurdles about overcoming the difficult shit that we face in life. And we all face it. Everybody here on this call is facing something. Man, life is hard at times. But together, somehow, if we keep doing it, some way or another, you never know where it'll come from. Maybe working with a sponsee, some healing that you need will be revealed to you in the magical, mystical way that things heal in Cocaine Anonymous. So it's no doubt about it, man. In fact, I think I ought to go buy him a Schwinn bike and put some extended forks on it, chop the handlebars, and go have some fun. It's a great life.